Hello, this is Suzanne Vincent again. This is our third lesson on men and women apologists. This one focuses on worldviews. It's a little shorter in terms of number of slides, but it's very important. It will help you find the materials you need if you're helping other people understand worldview, or if you're teaching a class on worldview in high school or college, or just want to increase your knowledge about worldview. This is an important lesson. Chapter 3 of the book and lesson 3 of the course. This lesson is divided into several topics. First of all, what is a biblical worldview? The book asks, is the biblical and a Christian worldview the same thing? And generally it is, but there's some discussions about that. We want to look at Francis Schaeffer, because Francis Schaeffer is really a person who influenced many others. Francis Schaeffer applied apologetics to all of life's concerns. We want to look at Summit Ministries, again, founded by David Noble. How about biblical worldview for Christian schools? What materials are available for teaching high school or other levels? Then we'll look at apologists that maintain that evolution is not true and that the universe and nature shows evidence for intelligent design. And then we want to look at apologists specifically for a young Earth viewpoint, that the universe is only 10,000 or so years old. And then we want to look at views by theistic evolutionists, those that believe in evolution but believe also in God. What are their views on creation and whether Adam was created by God? Is there a historical Adam? Some pastors and theologians like the term biblical worldview better than Christian because they say many different denominations call themselves Christian, but they don't subscribe to some very important beliefs, some important creeds, such as God is the creator, the need for Jesus to die on the cross for atonement for our sins, and the reality of the resurrection, the essence of the gospel. Let's start with the contribution of Francis Schaeffer to apologetics. Francis Schaeffer passed away in 1984, and he is therefore a 20th century apologist. As mentioned before, Francis Schaeffer believed that apologetics applied to all of life's concerns. He said that Christianity explains how we know, where we came from, and how we should act. So it applied to our knowledge, our curiosity, and about where we came from, what is our origin and our purpose, and then how we should act, what we should do in life. He argued that naturalism, secular philosophy, relativism, existentialism, and pantheism, other worldviews, cannot answer these questions. Francis Schaeffer wrote Escape from Reason, as mentioned in the first lesson, a very influential book. He also produced a documentary, 10 films, 10 lessons on how should we then live, the rise and decline of Western thought and culture. I studied this. This is my study guide from 1980. When I was a graduate student at the University of Washington in Seattle, I attended a church that had a singles group who studied the 10 sessions of this documentary. We covered one film per week. The first session was ancient Rome. And just to give you an example, the study guide goes through the major um, concepts for each lesson, and then it has study guide questions. The first study guide question for session one was what happens when a group or a society builds its laws upon what they themselves think is right. So the group would then discuss this question after watching the film. Worldview, passing the baton. So the people we're going to look at are Os Guinness, David Noble, and Nancy Pearcey. These three have contributed greatly to the concept of a biblical worldview. So we'll cover each one of these. All right, Nancy Pearcey emphasized that apologetics has to show that the Christian worldview is in alignment with reality. The other worldviews, like secular humanism, are not in alignment with what's really going on as we look around and see what's happening in the world, in our lives, amongst our peers, our co-workers, our fellow citizens. Nancy Pearcey's expertise in worldview analysis began, as she has stated many times, when she was studying with Francis Schaeffer at L'Abri in the early 70s. Here is a picture of L'Abri in Switzerland. Many people were influenced by Francis Schaeffer. In 1999, Chuck Colson and Nancy Pearcey published How Now Shall We Live? This is a sequence, in a sense, to the idea of how should we then live? How now shall we live? Is their book, and it discussed how a person should live, taking into consideration the true version of reality. Another apologist influenced by Francis Schaeffer is Os Guinness. He spent 3 years at L'Abri in the 1960s. He's from the UK. Os Guinness is now a visiting lecturer at Oxford Centre for Christian Apologetics. He now lives in the United States, but he travels a lot and speaks in many different places. One of his latest books, 2022, is The Great Quest, Invitation to an Examined Life and a Sure Path to Meaning. I'm taking a quote from this book on the next slide. I'll give you the quote on page 99 of this book. Here is the quote from Os Guinness's book. One of the most futile arguments in contemporary thinking is the debate between those who argue that faith and good thinking stem from having the right framework of presuppositions, and those who argue that they stem from having solid evidences. What should be clear from this description of the journey toward faith is that the answer is not either or, but both and which when. Both presuppositions and evidences are a key part of the seeker's quest, and the real question is which to focus on and when. You see that he's saying that the presuppositionalists and the evidentialists are actually both needed in Apologetics. How about Summit Ministries? Summit Ministries, as mentioned before, was founded by David Noble in Manitou Springs, Colorado in 1962. Noble received his bachelor's degree from Hope College in Holland, Michigan, and he received his master's from the University of Tulsa. David Noble, Worldview. All right, his first edition of the book, Understanding the Times, the Story of Biblical Christian, Marxist, Leninist, and Secular Humanist Worldview, was published, and you can obtain a copy of that book published in 1991. A second edition was published in 2011. The second edition included Islam, Cosmic Humanism, and Postmodernism, and the title was changed, Understanding the Times, the Collision of Today's Competing Worldviews. And then in 2015, a third edition, a new edition, was published with a slightly different title, Understanding the Times, a Survey of Competing Worldviews, and it was authored both by Dr. Jeff Myers and Dr. David Noble. Understanding the Times. The Summit Ministries is now headed up by Dr. Jeff Myers. His Ph.D. is from the University of Denver in philosophy. His most recent book I read, 2022, it's Truth Changes Everything. In the book, he talks about surviving cancer and how truth has helped him in many ways throughout his life. It's a short book, easy to read, and very helpful. How about biblical worldview for Christian schools? One book that's used as a textbook in Christian schools is Biblical Worldview, Creation, Fall, Redemption. This is published by BJU, Bob Jones University Press in Greenville, South Carolina. The lead author is Mark L. Ward, Jr. His doctorate is in New Testament interpretation from Bob Jones Seminary. Biblical Worldview. Here's a picture of the book, Biblical Worldview, and here is Mark L. Ward. There are also contributing authors from Bob Jones Seminary, Brian Collins, Brian Smith, and Gregory Stykes, all affiliated with Bob Jones Seminary. This book has chapters and questions and a study guide to go along to help students. Another group, the two brothers Roger Wheelock and Breck J. Wheelock, founded a ministry called Greater Than I Ministries. This provides biblical worldview textbooks and video materials to be used in schools or in churches. Roger Wheelock is an ordained pastor, and his brother Breck Wheelock is trained in the sciences. Here's a picture of Breck Wheelock's book published in 2018, How Do We Know? Sensation or Revelation? Subtitle, Does Knowledge Originate in the Eyes of Men or in the Mouth of God? So Greater Than I Ministries. The textbooks and a video series to go along with it are available from the Greater Than I Ministries. The first one you see here is sessions subjects 1 through 6, And the second one is subjects 7 through 12. You are what you think, applying a Christian worldview to all of life. So a whole series to help people study worldview. And here you see that it's called Christian worldview. Right, how about apologists with an intelligent design viewpoint? It was very interesting that a fellow of Discovery Institute, which is the premier organization that promotes intelligent design, fellow is Charles Thaxton. Charles Thaxton actually attended L'Abri in the early 70s too. I'm sure he and Nancy Pearcey know each other. Actually, Nancy Pearcey is a fellow at Discovery Institute now too. Thaxton co-wrote with other authors The Mystery of Life's Origin in 1984. Second apologist at the Discovery Institute is Stephen Meyer. His Ph.D. is in History and Philosophy of Science from Cambridge. His bachelor's degree was in Physics and Earth Sciences from Whitworth College in Washington State. A third apologist with the intelligent design viewpoint, a fellow at Discovery Institute, is William Dembski. His Ph.D. is from University of Chicago in math. He also has a Ph.D. in philosophy from the University of Illinois at Chicago and a Master's of Divinity from Princeton Theological Seminary. All three of these apologists are associated with Discovery Institute in Seattle. Stephen Meyer tells of a conference where he met Dean Kenyon from San Francisco State University and Charles Thaxton. This is where he became interested in the origin of life. He had completed his bachelor's in physics and earth sciences at Whitworth, and he was working for an oil company in Dallas. This particular conference he attended was also in Dallas. Then after meeting these two influential people, he went on to receive a Ph.D. from the University of Cambridge in the philosophy of science in 1991. Steve Meyer is the founder of the Center for the Renewal of Science and Culture at Discovery Institute. This center, part of the Discovery Institute, was founded in 1996. As mentioned before, Discovery Institute promotes intelligent design. On the right, you see Thaxton's book, 1984 book, The Mystery of Life's Origins. So we can look at Os Guinness and Nancy Pearcey as being influenced by Francis Schaeffer, and as it turns out, Charles Thaxton, intelligent design proponent, also was influenced by Francis Schaeffer. Francis Schaeffer being a very important apologist. How about a young Earth perspective? There are three apologists for young Earth that I would say are influential. Number one, presently active Dr. Grady McMurtry of Creation Worldview Ministries, Goldenrod, Florida. He's the author of the book Creation, Our Worldview. Worldview is dependent upon creation viewpoint, according to McMurtry. McMurtry began his studies in environmental sciences at the University of New York at Syracuse, and has since then done work in theology and has a doctorate in religious studies. The second apologist for young Earth is Ken Ham. He founded the Creation Museum. His Answers in Genesis ministry is said to be an apologist ministry. More recently, he and many other people with him built the Ark Encounter, a replica of Noah's Ark in Kentucky. So his ministry is Answers in Genesis. And then thirdly, over the years I have run across work by Wayne Jackson, Church of Christ. He passed away in 2020, and he worked with Apologetics Press, which is a Church of Christ apologetics publishing company. And here's a book written by Wayne Jackson, Surveying the Evidence. Finally, we want to look at the views by theistic evolutionists on creation and how Adam was created by God. So I'm looking at 4 of them here: Hugh Ross, John Lennox, William Lane Craig, and Tim Keller. Hugh Ross is an astrophysicist. His ministry is Reasons to Believe. He believes in evolutionary time, that the universe is billions, 14 billion approximately years old. He calls himself a progressive creationist. He said God created man separate from other organisms about 100,000 years ago. John Lennox is a mathematician. He presently works with the Oxford Center for Apologetics, Christian Apologetics. He accepts an evolutionary time frame as well, but he says man was created separately from plants and animals. He was created from the dust. Lennox is considered to be in the intelligent design camp. William Lane Craig, the apologist at Biola University in California. He says Adam was created from human hominoids, perhaps about 700,000 years ago. He also maintains that sin did not necessarily lead to death. This is metaphorical, and there's a discussion in the book that accompanies this course about this idea of sin not leading to death, held by William Craig. And then finally, Timothy Keller, a pastor in Manhattan who founded the Gospel Coalition. He passed away in 2023. He says that Adam was a hominoid brought into the garden by God, and that Eve, of course, was created from Adam, as the Bible says. After Adam and Eve sinned, the fall occurred, according to Timothy Keller. This is a good introduction to worldview. Worldview being influenced to some extent by doctrines, by beliefs about creation, evolution, young earth, creation, and intelligent design. This is a good place to start with your study of worldview.